And we still have a predominantly white population at the school.
You're talking about like a private school?
Yeah,
or
yeah. Private Christian school. Your teaching staff is entirely white except for maybe one, okay? Now, here's just the question. I've had lots of exposure to different Christian schools, okay? There's like 4 or 5 of them that I think of all the time. One in particular, you know, a lot of Christian schools started in the 70s because they didn't want desegregation to happen. They wanted their kids, like literally, to not have to go to school with kids from the city.
Bob Jones University.
Yeah, come on. Again, that's an extreme.
Yes.
Where I live and where I'm talking about is not even Bob Jones extremism. It's just straight up one of our reasons, not the only one, but one of our reasons is we don't want to be with those kids.
Sure.
We don't want our kids going to school with those kids, city kids. They're dangerous. They're this, okay?
Okay.
Which becomes white-black right away. Not exclusively, because there's some white kids we don't want our kids going to school with either, but it's got a racial component to it.
Okay.
So you set yourself up in a certain way in the 70s that excludes those kids from being able to come to this school. Even if it's not like overtly written in. Again, this is how law works. We'll just make it so that we know that financially, we know that where we go to recruit, we know that, you know, what we put on our brochures or whatever, it's going to attract a certain kind of kid, and we're going to make it very difficult for kids we don't want here to be here.
You're talking about college in
I'm
particular.
talking about school.
Just school in general.
School in general.
Okay.
Though I do think this also definitely applies to college.
Okay.
I've got K through 12 in mind. Okay. And so I've had this conversation with somebody that was there when this was going on. Okay. Was old enough to have been there. Now, 40 years have passed, 50 years in some cases now. And we still have a predominantly white population at the school. You always got a few black kids mixed in, or, you know, a couple kids from exchange students or whatever from overseas. But it's still a predominantly white population.
And you're talking about like a private school?
Yeah,
or
Private Christian school.
Private Christian school.
Private Christian school.
Gotcha.
Okay,
And is it paid?
Yeah.
It's paid. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Your teaching staff is entirely white except for maybe one, okay? Now, here's just the question. And you're surrounded. This is the other thing. You've been surrounded. The school maybe has moved a couple times, but it has always been in spaces, coincidentally, where there were lots of non-white kids actually around in the neighborhoods.
Okay, so these that's going to be my next question is what is the demographics of these
totally
schools?
have access to non-white kids to come to the school.
So these are like in white Christian schools in black neighborhoods?
Black neighborhoods are close by.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
Interesting.
They're
Okay.
within distance to get there.
Yeah.
Okay? And again, hear what I'm saying. The conclusion to this is not going to be that everybody's racist. The conclusion for me is why would we think that if it was set in motion in a certain kind of way, unless there was an intervention somewhere along the way, that was going to change the way we went about our business. And I didn't even say the things that we teach, the way we talk about social issues, the theology and theological grid that we look through, how we talk politically in the classroom, like that hasn't changed. So until there's an intervention into some of that, why would, and of course, nobody's a racist now. We're not racist. Okay. But we still basically are functioning the same way that we did 50 years ago. Within the school and the way we're set up. Well, what are you saying? What are you saying about us? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's this immediate defensiveness instead of sitting back and saying, yeah, we do. Is there something in our patterns? And again, these are all P words. I didn't even do this on purpose, but this is what they are.
P words on purpose and patterns.
Right on. Patterns, policies, procedures, the way we operate together. Is there just stuff that we need to look at that maybe without doing it intentionally on our watch, they did it intentionally.
Yes.
On our watch, we just have not done anything to change it.
Okay.
We haven't noticed. We haven't paid attention. Everything is cool.
Yeah, so that would be a thing of omission, a sin of omission.
Yes,
there hasn't been intentionality.
And it would be a reflection of a systemic problem. Okay. So again, everybody loses their mind about systemic racism. It's like, okay, this is a systemic problem at this school. When I look at parachurch organizations that I've been a part of for over 30 years, am I surrounded with a bunch of racist white men and women? I don't believe that at all. But do we have a systemic problem in the way that we go about recruiting people to come to our staff, in the schools that we go to recruit, in the way resources are allocated, in the types of things that we talk about from the stage when we're having our staff trainings? You know what I'm saying? If we're never talking about, even in the 70s, and again, I've been in these conversations a lot lately, Ruslan, with my own people. It's like, if from the beginning of our organization, there was a commitment to not talking about race or racial issues, even in the height of when cities were still burning because of overt racism, you didn't want to talk about it then. We've set ourselves on a course to not be able to think intelligently as Christians about how to deal with race as a construct, as a sin. Like, we just don't talk about it. Or when it comes up, it immediately gets dismissed as just this political thing. It's just race baiting, or it's off mission, or there's always some way to not deal with it. Meanwhile, people that are directly affected by race, like, it's not coming to them as just a trending topic or, landing in their inbox because somebody sent an article. No, they're living with racial tension. You're not, but they are. Do we not have some obligation as Christians to try to understand that? Again, that doesn't mean I got to go along with every crazy solution that's produced, or even every observation and I've been around this. I don't have to go along with everything that gets said about it, but I know that I'm part of a people who have done a really good job of never talking about it at all.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What are you thinking? I'm poking at stuff.
It's so not my reality.
I know.
Like, my wife is black, my kids are mixed, all my friends are, either black or in interracial marriages or white, and they kind of are aware of some of the history, and they've are in tune enough to know that these things are reality, right? And so I think the part that would be, like, I think, okay, so there's a natural component where people are going to go into their silos. People are going to go into their own, right?
On. Yeah.
Unless your world is overflowing from a genuine multi-ethnic framework, which, again, I'm an immigrant, Armenian, mom's adopted, I look white, I don't look super Armenian. Like, my identity has always been shaped that it doesn't fall in neatly into boxes. So for me, these things overflow. So I'll give you the flip side to everything you just said, right?
Okay.
We homeschool our kids.
Okay.
We don't homeschool our kids for racial reasons, because I don't want my mixed black son to be around black kids. But we do want to curate their environment very carefully.
Right on.
And we do not want to put them in a public school system for a plethora of reasons. Because, we can rail against abuse in the church. We don't talk about how much abuse happens in the public school system, how you're more likely to be assaulted in the public school system, right? To be abused in the public school system.
Okay.
So we've intentionally created a very curated environment for them, where they're homeschooled 2 days a week. My son goes to a group. It's like an enrichment group. We can't call it school, but it's like all your basic stuff.
Okay.
At a church down the street. And then one day he goes for electives at a different church in Encinitas, right?
Okay.
And the Encinitas school is definitely going to be more predominantly white. The local school is fairly diverse. You got Hispanic kids, you got black kids. Like, it's pretty diverse.
It sounds like your kids are in a great situation, by the way. Right?
Yeah. And so
that's good.
So we have an environment for him, because it's not that, like, oh, those poor kids. It's like, no, I don't know what those kids are dealing with at home. And the last thing I need is someone bringing to my 9-year-old on a smartphone and showing them stuff he shouldn't see.
Yep,
right?
For sure.
So I think there's that, and I think that the Christian schools have had. I think some of the concern is more of that and less of, like, we just don't want that for our kids. Again, I don't know. I'm just saying in my environment, right? Yeah. And so I think when I'm examining, like, my circles, and I'm examining who's at these schools, like, granted, yes, the school in Encinitas is going to be way different than the school in Vista. My son is black and he's Armenian. He understands slavery and he understands the Armenian genocide.
Okay.
I'm not sending him to Encinitas and wanting him to be aware that he's the only black kid.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think there's any utility to that.
Yeah.
We don't sugarcoat slavery and the atrocities of that, and neither do we sugarcoat what happened to the Armenian people during the Armenian genocide. But sometimes it seems like there becomes this overemphasis of, let's talk about how you're other and how you're in a white space. And it's like, he's in a Christian space with a bunch of people that love Jesus.
Yeah.
Yes, they're in a different socioeconomic status being in Encinitas than in Vista. But these are not things that like we want him to be aware of. But that was the narrative in 2020. Sit your kids down, tell them about systemic racism. This was like on CNN, videos being created for kids.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I hear you. Again, I don't mean to be like insensitive. It's just that my selection bias, my world is very different. Guys, we're going to go over to our Patreon exclusive section, talk a little bit more with Ed. I want to talk to him about his conversation with our friend Tim from the New Evangelicals, some of the stuff that was said there, and kind of get his take on how this stuff is impacting critical race theory to queer theory and some of the craziness that's been happening in society. So meet us over on Patreon. Conversation will be a little too spicy for you two. We'll see you over there, all right?
He's allowed to be in the girls' bathroom if he's claiming to be transgender. Legally right now in Ohio, we can't do anything directly about that. Whether the Christians or the non-Christians involved, I don't think they cared all that much about this human being. They were just working their ideology out in front of everybody. Now, how do you protest? When do you protest? What's the spirit of the protest?
How do you not know and understand that like puberty blockers are not a good idea? So these people are upset under Roman occupation over a 2% tax rate. You know what the effective tax rate is in California and New York if you make a lot of money?
Ruslan